Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Sports Fan Network, and I'm Travis. And today we have a special video for you because our friend, our co-host, Andrew, is back from his month-long trip to South Korea. What's up, man? It's good to have you back on the show.
Feels great to be back, Travis. It was a great time in South Korea being at the Olympics, but man, I'm ready to talk some NFL football. It's great to be back, and let's get started, man.
Yeah, so in our video, Andrew and I created a list for the top 10 available free agents. We have no idea what order we put these in, so we're going to be going back and forth for our rankings. So, Andrew, I will start it with you. Who's coming in at number 10?
Well, I'm going to start this list off here with a little bit of a one-year wonder. Quarterback Case Keenum of the Minnesota Vikings. He had a really good year last season. A lot of that could be attributed to Pat Shurmur as the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings last season, who's now the head coach of the New York Football Giants. But Case Keenum, I feel like he's a very solid football player. And while he's a little bit of a one-year wonder, like I said, he gets on my list because the quarterback position is such a valuable position that I think a team looking for him, like the Denver Broncos or the Arizona Cardinals, could do a very nice job of bringing him in to kind of be a veteran game manager type of quarterback. And I think he's a very solid football player overall. I think the best that we saw of him was last season, but I still feel like he can be a very solid starting quarterback in this league.
Yeah, if you don't remember, Casey Keenum played at Houston for his college football. He had a terrific college career, throwing for several thousand yards, and has set a lot of NCAA records for passing touchdowns during his time in Houston. But that's why I have him a little bit higher on my list, because the quarterback position is the most important position on the entire football team. And yes, he had a great defense with the Minnesota Vikings, but he had a terrific season. He's only in his mid-20s. He has not even hit his prime, and he's got a very strong arm. I think he can be a very good quarterback for a franchise. He kind of reminds me of Alex Smith, where he's got some mobility, he's got a strong arm, and he can deliver with accuracy. So that's kind of who the guy I compare Casey Keenum to. I think he's going to get a pretty big contract since he played so well and he plays the quarterback position. But for me, coming in at number 10, I have cornerback Kyle Fuller for the Chicago Bears. He was a former first-round pick who had a very good rookie season. He was a very good ball hawk in his rookie season. And then throughout the next couple of years, he had an up and down. He had injuries he had to fight through. He had inconsistency problems. But he had a very good season last year. He's one of the better slot cornerbacks. He's still very young. He's got some upside. So that's why I have him at number 10.
Yeah, for me at number 9, I have Sheldon Richardson, defensive lineman, who played for the Seattle Seahawks last season, traded there from New York Jets. And with Richardson, I feel like his value is more on upside rather than production in the last few seasons. When you look at the last 30 games that he's played, he only has 2.5 sacks, and it's not really good pass rushing production for a guy that was once a Pro Bowl level player. And non-pass rushers don't really get paid in free agency. But I think a team might look at him, look at his Pro Bowl status, look at the talent, and the fact that he's still a very good run defender as a defensive lineman, either in a 3-4 or a 4-3 scheme, depending on kind of how you want to use him. He's still got some value in this league, and I feel like with his upside, he could get a pretty good big payday, and he's a very talented player. My only concern for him is that he's got some character concerns off the field, so that does bring his value down a little bit. But if he can avoid those character concerns and really keep his head straight on the football field, he's a very nice football player that I think any team would want to add to their team.
Yeah, he's one of the more riskier players in free agency. Like you said, he's got that potential upside. As we've seen in the past, he can really dominate offensive lines. He's more of a guy that's very good against the run than the pass. But he does have some character issues that teams have to be wary of. But this is not a very deep defensive end class in free agency. So I think there will be some team that will take a risk on him and give him a lot of money. And hopefully he can get back to his Pro Bowl form where he's one of the better defensive ends. But for me, coming in at number 9, I have Jimmy Graham. I still think Jimmy Graham is one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Last season, he had 10 touchdowns. So Jimmy Graham is still one of the best red zone threats in the entire NFL. He's got great size. He's got very good speed for a tight end. So he could still stretch the field in the middle. I know he wasn't featured a lot in the Seattle Seahawks offense, but I think if Jimmy Graham goes to a pass-heavy team, I think you'll see his stats rise up again. And an interesting thing is there have been rumors that the Saints have been interested in bringing back Jimmy Graham. And how exciting would that be? Pairing him up with Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Michael Thomas, that offense would just be electric.
Yeah, I'm not as high as Jimmy Graham am as you are, Travis. I don't really have him on my top 10 list even. For me, Jimmy Graham, injuries and age have kind of slowed him down a little bit. He's still valuable as a red zone target, I believe. But as a feature player, as a feature wide receiver in your offense, he's definitely not the same player anymore. He doesn't have the speed to kind of take the top off defenses. And he's not really an elite matchup nightmare like he once was early in his career. He's still a very solid player. He might get overpaid, especially for teams like maybe the Baltimore Ravens who are desperate for any receiving options out there. But we'll see where he goes. He's still a very solid veteran option. This is kind of his last chance to get a big contract here, I feel like, as he's entering his 30s going forward. But for me, going on with my list at number 8, I have cornerback Tremaine Johnson, who last played for the Los Angeles Rams last season. He got franchise tag the last couple of seasons with the Rams, and because they really weren't sure whether they wanted to commit to a long-term deal for him, he's kind of a guy who's not really a number one shutdown cornerback, but he's really not really more of a 2 cornerback for me. He's kind of in the middle there, where he's not quite a 1, but he's not quite a 2. So he's a very good player overall. Though he's got good size, plays very physical, very athletic, makes a lot of plays. But again, he's not really much of a shutdown player. And he's really older for a free agent. He's going to be 28 years old, I believe, going into this free agency. So his upside in terms of a long-term deal might be a little bit lower for some teams because he's not going to be entering his prime for the durations of the deal. So we'll see how that works out for Tremaine Johnson.
Yeah, and for me coming in at number 8, this is where I put Casey Keenum, because this is a guy that is very good. He is very good in college. He's got a very strong arm. You look at last year, he's very good with the ball in his hands. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's good at reading defenses, not making mistakes. He's also got very good mobility. He can roll him out of the pocket. He can extend plays. I think Casey Keenum is a very good player. That's why I have him inside my top 10.
All right, moving on for me at number 7. This might be a surprise for some people, but I have tight end Trey Burton, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles. If you remember, he threw that touchdown pass to Nick Foles in the Super Bowl. So he's got a lot of skills, obviously. He can be maybe a team looking to sign him might use him as a quarterback in some instances. We'll see. But for me, he's a very good example of the modern-day tight end where you can move him around all over the field. He's very athletic. And he showed last year when Zach Ertz dealt with some minor injuries throughout the season here and there that he could step in and still be a very productive wide receiving option for any offense. It kind of reminds me of the situations with the 49ers a few years ago when you remember that Vernon Davis was the number 1 tight end for the 49ers and Delanie Walker was entering free agency, got a good deal from the Tennessee Titans, and broke out into a Pro Bowl level player. I feel like the same thing can happen with Trey Burton here. I love his upside, and he's entering his prime. I feel like he can be a very solid player for any team that wants to get a playmaking tight end.
I think this is a very interesting pick. Like I said, I didn't know Andrew's list, and I'm kind of happy that you did include Trey Burton in your top 10. Me, personally, he fell just outside my top 10, but not a lot of people know the name. He was a backup for the Eagles, and when Zach Ertz went down, he performed very well. He's still young. He can run block, and he's a very good receiving threat. But I am pretty shocked that you have him ranked over guys like Tremaine Johnson and Sheldon Richardson. I would have had him at number 10, but I think that's a very dark horse guy. This is a guy that's not going to get a big contract, but for whatever teams that gets him, they're going to get a good all-around player. But for me, coming in at number 7, I have Zach Brown. He's one of the more older free agents this year, but man, this guy is a tackling machine. He is just very good against the run. He's very good at reading plays in the backfield. He's a very smart football player. He's a guy that could come in and he could be your play caller on defense. He's a veteran presence in the locker room. He's not as fast as he used to be, and that's why sometimes he's been exposed in coverage. But he's very good against the run, so that's what you know you're getting for him, and he can fill up the middle of the defense for a team.
Yeah, I like Zach Brown a lot. He's a very solid veteran player. I'll get to him later on my list, but moving on with my list at number 6, I have Malcolm Butler, cornerback formerly of the New England Patriots. We saw him burst onto the scene with that great Super Bowl play, becoming a Super Bowl hero, parlayed that into a Pro Bowl level season the next season. But last year he kind of slipped, I feel like, in his production, and he got benched in the Super Bowl really surprisingly by Bill Belichick. I still question that move, even though I still feel like his production was not as good as previous seasons. Really a big question mark for me, and that kind of lowers his value a little bit in free agency. So he might come at a bargain for some teams, but I feel like he's still worth a big contract from anywhere from 10 to 12 million per season. He's a very good cornerback. He might not be a true shutdown cornerback, but I feel like he's kind of like Trumaine Johnson, where he's either number one or a number two, kind of in that area class. But he's a very good football player still. I'm fairly high on Malcolm Butler going to free agency.
What? Oh my gosh. You're telling me you don't have Malcolm Butler inside your top 5?
I do not have him inside my top 5. I'm just outside my top 5.
So you don't think he's the best cornerback in free agency?
I do not. I'll be getting to my top cornerback later, but he's not my number one cornerback.
I mean, the Super Bowl hero, a Pro Bowler, an All-Pro. Yes, he did not have a great season, but he's still relatively young. And like you said, you think he can fetch, 10 to $12 million. I think that if he's making that type of money, he's got to be in your top 5. For me, he is. But that was just really shocking. I think Malcolm Butler is the best cornerback in the free agency. But for me, coming in at number 6, I have a different cornerback. I have cornerback Trumaine Johnson. This is a guy, like you said, I got franchise tag 2 years in a row. The Rams traded for Marcus Peters, so it seems more than likely that Trumaine Johnson is on his way out the door. I think he's a very good football player. He's durable. He's a guy that's good, got very good coverage skills, and a guy that's going to go out there and he can line up against the number 1 or the number 2 wide receiver. I think he can make roughly, 6 to 8 million in free agency. I think some teams might have a bidding war on him, and they may actually overpay for his services.
Yeah, I feel like Trumaine Johnson might get a little bit overpaid more in the 10 to 12 million range. He's kind of proving he's still a very good cornerback in this league, but entering my top 5 here for free agents, I have Zach Brown, inside linebacker from formerly the Washington Redskins. He was very good. He wasn't really as good as many people thought he would be earlier on in his career. He was kind of a tease talent-wise, but he kind of showed in the last couple of years that he's a very dependable playmaker at the inside linebacker position, tackling machine, very good stopping the run. And I just love him as a solid football player. He maybe a top-end ascending Pro Bowl level talent, but I feel like he's a very safe option for any team. He's not going to break the bank necessarily, which is why I put him a little bit higher on my list in terms of I feel like there's some value there as well. So I feel like from a value and a talent and production standpoint, that's why I put him in my top 5. Very solid football player all around.
Yeah, I can see why you put him there. The only reason why I didn't have him in my top 5 is because of his age. He is one of the older linebackers. But other than that, the last few seasons, he's been very productive. But for me, coming in at number 5, I chose Allen Robinson. I think that he is actually the best wide receiver free agent available among all of them. This guy is very good. Only a couple of years ago, he had over 1,400 receiving yards. He's a wide receiver that can stretch you deep. He's also very tall, so he's a guy that you can throw the jump balls to. And he's still very young. I know he's coming off a torn ACL, and that might scare some teams. But I think he can be a very good addition to a team that's lacking, a number 1 or a number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, I like Allen Robinson a lot. I'll be getting to him a little bit later on my list. But for number 4, I have Kyle Fuller, my top-rated cornerback for me personally. Kyle Fuller, after going through some inconsistencies in his first couple of seasons, really came on late this past season, had a very fantastic year, was very underrated, I feel like. And he led the league in passes defended this past season. And, he was very underrated, I feel like, overall. The Bears put the exclusive tag on him, which means that he can negotiate with other teams in free agency, but the Bears have the right to match with any other offer that is made to him. So even though he still is technically a free agent at this point, it's very likely that he's going to stay with the Chicago Bears. But, I just really liked Kyle Fuller overall this past season. He really came on late, really surprised me as a Bears fan. I wasn't really having that big of high expectations of him going into the year. So for him to play like that, he played at a Pro Bowl level for the most part this season and really paved the way. He's not really a number 1 shutdown guy at this point, but I feel like he's a number 1 cornerback in this league. He's a top-rated corner on my list, and he's entering his prime as well, which is why I have him rated so high. So the trend is going up for Kyle Fuller.
Kyle Fuller led the league in passes defended last year?
Yes, he did.
I did not know that. That's not what I would have guessed if you would have asked me, Travis, who do you think led the league in passes defended?
I believe 22 was the number. 22, I believe.
All right, that's pretty impressive. Kyle Fuller, I got more respect for you now. I think the only thing I'm not fond on is his size. He's not a very big guy. So sometimes if you got him paired up on the outside versus a number one wide receiver who has a very big body like Julio Jones, I feel like he might struggle in those situations where Malcolm Butler might have a better advantage since he's a little bit bigger than Fuller, but that's just my opinion. Me, though, coming in at number 4, I had Sheldon Richardson. I know he has a lot of character issues and that his numbers have dipped in the past, but defensive end, a pass rushing guy, that is very something that a lot of teams look for in free agency. I think he's the best defensive end on all the free agents, and he's still relatively young. He can still have a few more Pro Bowl seasons left in him, and if he can really, stay on track and, when he's playing at his best, he's one of the better defensive ends. So I think this is a very good defensive player that a team can find.
Yeah, Sheldon Richardson wasn't as high on my list for those characters concerns and the fact that his pass rushing numbers have gone down a little bit, but I still feel like he's a very solid football player overall. But going on to number 3, my top 3, cracking in here is Allen Robinson, wide receiver formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They decided not to tag him in any way, shape, or form, not even an exclusive tag to maybe match any offers. So it looks like he might be leaving the Jacksonville Jaguars as they don't really have that much cap room going forward this past season after going on some huge free agency splashes the past couple of off seasons. So Allen Robinson, the top wide receiver on the market, he's coming off a torn ACL injury like you mentioned earlier. So maybe that brings down his value a little bit to more, instead of getting $12 to $14 million per year, maybe it's more around the $8 to $10 million per year, as some teams may not want to commit long term to him. And he might get a situation like last year with Alshon Jeffrey, if you remember, signed a 1-year deal with the Eagles where there's a lot of incentives. He might have to settle for something like that, which would be a huge bargain, I think, for any team looking for a top-end wideout. He's got great talent, I feel like, and he showed a couple of seasons ago that he's definitely got number 1 wide receiver potential. He looked like a top 10 wide receiver a few seasons ago with Blake Bortles as quarterback. This is very tough to do, guys. Blake Bortles is absolutely terrible. Blake Bortles even mentioned it to the media himself that he's not a natural passer. So the fact that Allen Robinson was able to get 14 touchdowns out of that in a season, that's impressive. You got to admit that there. So I have Allen Robinson up there. Any pass-needy team, say Chicago Bears, please sign him. Would be
not an endorsement.
If the contract is not, ridiculously high and in the Julio Jones or Antonio Brown level.
I think you brought up a really good point referencing the Alshon Jeffrey free agency period last year, where that could be in the best interest for Allen Robinson if teams are not willing to pay him that 10 to 12 million to 14 million range, where he can sign a 1-year deal where he's recovering from a torn ACL, where teams can see if he can play through an entire season healthy. And then if he puts up monster numbers, he'll hit free agency again and he can get, the type of money he wants on a long-term deal. He's still pretty young. So that would be interesting to see how he plays that out for him. But for me, coming in at number 3, I got to give respect to the big fellas. I got guard Andrew Norwell coming in the top 3. He is the best guard in free agency. I think he's going to fetch a pretty hefty contract considering he's the best guard in free agency. He still hasn't hit his prime. He's still in his mid-20s. He's very good at run blocking and pass blocking. And the offensive line is important because you got to protect your franchise quarterback, so you need the big guys up front. So that's why I have him in my top 3.
Yep, I agree full-heartedly. I have Andrew Norwell as my number 2 free agent on the market here. Like you said, this guy's a beast. He's been a Pro Bowl level player the last few seasons, went All-Pro this past season. I feel like he might be rejoining David Gettleman, the GM of the New York Giants, who was formerly the GM of the Carolina Panthers, who drafted him. He might be. I could see him going up to the New York Giants, who desperately need any offensive line help they can get to protect either Eli Manning or a rookie quarterback, whatever they decide to do there. Andrew Norwell is a beast. He can block in the running game. He's solid in pass protection. He's a very solid. He's a very, very good player overall, and any team would be happy to add him to their offensive line.
Yeah, and then for me, coming in at number 2, I have, in my opinion, the best cornerback in free agency, Malcolm Butler. This guy, look at his accolades. Super Bowl hero. He's won a Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, All-Pro. This guy can be a lockdown corner. Yes, he didn't have the best season last year, but he's still in his, mid to upper 20s. And I think he's still got a few very productive seasons left. I think that if a team that needs to fix their secondary issues, this would be the guy that you'd want to target in free agency.
Yep, and I think we both agree on who our number one free agents here is. Obviously, I have Kirk Cousins as my number one free agent, quarterback formerly of the Washington Redskins. It's not too often that a top 10 to 12 quarterback becomes available on the market, but this is the case here. And, I mean, he's really the number one domino for free agency and all the chaos that will ensue once the new league year opens up. And Kirk Cousins, he's had some 3 very productive seasons over the past few seasons, put up some really good numbers. Last year did not have quite as good as a year because his O-line really got ravaged by injuries and the weapons just wasn't there for him in Washington. But any team looking for a franchise-level quarterback, he may not be quite a franchise quarterback in my opinion, but like I said, he's right up there in terms of a top 10 to 12 guy, an above average, very good, solid NFL quarterback, and it's just not too often that these guys become available in free agency like this, especially entering the prime of his career.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said, everything you said. You just don't see guys hitting free agency with the kind of resume that Kirk Cousins has. This is a guy that, can easily throw for over 4,000 yards in a season, and he still hasn't even hit his prime yet. This man is about to get paid, and I think the teams that are competing for a Super Bowl that have problems under center, they just need to give this man a blank check because he can put a team over the edge. He's the best quarterback in free agency. I think, they said that he narrowed down his destination to 4 teams between the Jets, the Cardinals, the Broncos, and what was the 4th team?
The 4th team was the Vikings.
And the Vikings. So I think, these teams, Kirk Cousins is an upgrade over all their quarterbacks last year, and that's why he's our number one free agent.
Yeah, it's just not often that this is the case where you can get just a quality quarterback in free agency. It just never happens. Rather than maybe just like a Peyton Manning situation where the guy was coming off an injury, just very rare. And this is very interesting. This is shaping up to be a very interesting offseason, Travis. And these free agents really help to make this a very intriguing offseason for so many teams out there. So I'm really looking forward to the NFL offseason already, man.
Yeah, same here. And that's our thoughts on the 2018 free agency preview. Let us know in the comments below. Who do you think is the best 10 free agents available? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? It's about to be very busy, a couple of weeks in the NFL. We're going to have a lot of videos coming out soon about everything that happens at free agency. So thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, it feels so good to be back, and the best time of the year, NFL offseason. A lot of changes are going to be coming, a lot of interesting things to discuss. So thanks, guys, for watching. It's great to be back.